Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. One of the most precious things we can find through practice is a peaceful mind. It's something very easy to overlook the importance of, to underestimate how valuable it is. I think people sometimes have a desire for sort of spectacular experiences in meditation or wonderful breakthroughs, and overlook the great benefits of just finding inner peace. Something is very much lacking in the world, and I think our modern culture exacerbates a natural human tendency to restlessness with all the stimulus of the senses that's constantly bombarding people. But people have even if they don't articulate it or don't even understand it themselves, they have a deep longing to find that peace. This is one important reason there's so much problems with drug abuse. People find a way to pacify the mind with chemical means and do themselves a lot of damage and ruin their lives just to find that little bit of peace. The tendency of the ordinary mind, untrained mind, is to run wild, to be restless and constantly at some degree of agitation, and at a low boil most of the time and occasionally flaring up. This is something that's pretty universally experienced when people start to meditate. They notice how busy and complicated their mind is, how much the thought patterns run on and on. And it's a difficult thing to subdue at first. Many meditators, the first time they do serious meditation, like they go on retreat and meditate for many hours a day, and one of the things that they often report, they think they're going crazy because they see how much stuff is going on in the mind. And I always tell them to calm down. You're not going crazy. That's how your mind has been all your life up till now. You just haven't noticed it. Now you're being conscious and you're seeing it. Mind running around and constantly chasing after this or that. The instructions in the Satipatthana Sutta begin with putting aside covetousness and grief towards the world. It's a very succinct phrase. That covetousness and grief is attachment and aversion, and this is what the mind tends to be doing, is thinking about what it desires, what it wants to have or experience or do, or falling into negativity, regrets, sadness, irritation, complaining, and oscillating between these kind of attachment and aversion. And these kind of thought processes they're not only counterproductive, they're also completely useless. if you look at your thinking process, once you start to become conscious of it, you become aware of how much of the thinking process is completely worthless. It's just the mind running around on nonsense. Thinking processes can be a powerful tool. You have to apply thinking, like say your car won't start, so you have to think about what could be wrong. Or you're planning a trip, you need to think about booking airline tickets and so on. And this is like using thinking as a tool. There's also thinking that is a part of Dhamma practice. In several places in the suttas, the Buddha talks about different steps or stages towards developing deep states of meditation, and it begins with hearing the Dhamma, which would also include reading, but in those days it was only hearing the Dhamma, then reflecting on it, thinking about it. And that comes before actually meditating. Reading the suttas or listening to Dhamma talks, you should have your mind engaged and trying to think it through and understand the meaning. Now that's using the thinking process in a positive way. And learning to have some control, some discipline over the thinking process is something that takes a while, and it comes with practice. The ideal is the mind of an arahant who thinks only what he wants to think when he wants to think it, and doesn't think what he doesn't want to think. So his thinking process is entirely subject to his will. It's not running willy-nilly like an ordinary person's. And when you develop some proficiency in meditation, you should be noticing quietude between and behind the thoughts. It might be a very long time before you reach states of mind where the thinking process is entirely quiescent. But it's not so difficult to get to a place where you can notice periods between thoughts. There's one thought that doesn't necessarily follow one another in an unbroken chain. You have periods of quiescence. This is actually true in a technical way for even the busiest mind, but gaps are so brief you don't notice them. One of the principal defilements that obstructs finding peacefulness of mind is, and this is often paired with anxiety, as in the list of the 5 hindrances, they're paired, uddhacca, kucca. Restlessness is the more fundamental one. It's underlying much more superficial expressions of defilement is often underlied by restlessness. This is one of the deepest defilements. It's a fetter that's not overcome until arahantship. So there'll be some degree of restlessness in the mind until arahantship. We have to learn to notice this this factor and not surrender to it. The mind will not be the mind with restlessness is not content to remain still. So it's antithetical to the very basis of samadhi and of passaddhi, peacefulness. It's a mind that wants to shift and move and fidget. It's not content to be still. An important principle in meditation is that restlessness is never overcome by giving into it. This is a very common failing or mistake that meditators will make. They're overcome by restlessness in their sitting, and they think, well, my meditation is not going well, maybe I should pack it in for now and go and do something else. And every time you give in for restlessness like that, you make it harder to overcome it the next time. You see the mind overcome with restlessness, the only way through is to bear through it, is to, even though it can be very difficult, is to sit still, mentally and physically. Don't give in to the urge to do something else, to break away, to allow. Don't give in to that wandering mind. It's the opposite of if the mind is succumbing to dullness. If the mind is sleepy, tired, falling into dull states, then it's quite appropriate and useful to get up from sitting and do something more active, even if it's just walking meditation, or something even more active like doing some exercise, go for a walk, or take care of your chores, whatever it might be, to break that, wake up from that dullness. When people go off the meditation, when the meditation is not going well, there's many different ways that can happen, but they generally fall into two broad categories, either dullness or restlessness. Like too much energy or too little energy. Too much energy, the wrong kind of energy, like restless, agitated energy, or a total lack of energy. So you have to first recognize what the issue is, and then you respond in the correct manner. This is part of what Ajahn talked about, going against the grain. That was one of his phrases, going against the grain. And one of the ways that applies is when you do whatever the desire mind is telling you to do, you do the opposite. So if you're restless, the mind is telling you to, get up, go for a walk, do some stretching, take care of business. And you have to ignore that wheedling voice, suggestions, and just sit still, be very quiet, restrained. And if you're sinking into dullness, the mind is quite happy to just, just slump over and wrap a blanket around yourself and, go into a half dozy, sleepy state. Just the desire mind just wants to sort of do that. And you need to break out of that. The primary practice for developing peacefulness is mindfulness of breathing, which we tend to emphasize a lot. It's the meditation is said to be the sublime in the beginning, sublime in the middle, sublime in the ending, because it's entirely peaceful in its nature. You're paying attention to a calm, repetitive bodily process, one that's not in any way exciting, but it's mildly pleasant and not in any way abrupt or sharp-edged. It's just a smooth, peaceful cycling in and out. And if you fill the mind with that physical sensation of breathing, this has a tendency to, just by its own nature, it has a tendency to quiet down the mental processing. If your mind has a tendency to run off into compulsive thinking, cyclical thinking, caught in thought formations, there are ways to enhance that pacifying effect. One that's very commonly done in Thailand is using the mantra Budo with the breath. Bu on the in-breath, Do on the out-breath. Because that engages the mental factors of Vitakka and Vichara, which are the underlying energy of verbal formation. And when they're not engaged in verbal thinking, they become the jhana factors that hold the object. But if they're constantly running off into thinking, then you can't hold the object. So you use a simple repetitive mantra, Budo, to engage that energy of thought formation into something very simple and peaceful, and sort of turn it in on itself. Another method that some people find very much more useful and peaceful than is notice the breath at the abdomen instead of at the nose tip. Generally, most Theravada instruction is to watch the breath at the nose tip. In the Zen tradition, they use the belly. You find a point, usually it's just below the navel, and you can rest the mind there and just watch the movement in and out of the breath. Some people find that much more conducive to peacefulness, and I think one reason for that is you're getting your consciousness down below the neck. People that are caught very much in their head and thinking, that's quite a useful shift. It's also very grounded, because that point is, they call it in Japanese, it's called the har point. It's also used in martial arts. If you center your consciousness in the har point and move around it, because it's also the center of gravity of the body. So you're very grounded and centered if your consciousness is resting there. A peaceful mind, as you can find it more and more and come to cherish it and see how wonderful it is to have a peaceful mind. It plays out in all your activities, in your daily life and your interactions with other people. If you're coming from a place of peacefulness, then you can deal with situations. Because it's important principle to remember is that this is samsara. It's always going to be broken. There's always going to be something going wrong. So it causes suffering to expect or desire perfect conditions, to expect things to be complete. I knew a fellow once who told me something that I thought was a good piece of homespun wisdom. He said, the trick to living happily in the country is give up on the idea that you will ever catch up on your chores. If you abandon that idea completely, then you can be peaceful. And I think that doesn't just apply to being in the country. I think that's any life in the world. You're never caught up with your chores. You have to learn the skill of letting it go, of picking it up when it needs to be picked up, and abandoning it, letting it go when it's not. You have something that needs doing, you do it, and when you're not doing it, you let it go, you abandon it, you put it down. You can pick it up again later. If you can have a peaceful mind, and if you can manifest that in the world, you're not only experiencing greater happiness and contentment in your own life, but you're just by doing that, you're a great service to those around you. Because mind states in general can be kind of contagious. And if there's somebody who's peaceful and calm in the midst of a difficult situation, then that can be a help to others. Don't be the one who follows the idea, when in danger, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. It's exactly the wrong way to approach any kind of problematic situation. And it's again a principle, this is samsara, there's going to be problematic situations. You're going to face difficulties, even crises. When they come, you need to be prepared and ready and operating from a center that's peaceful and is able to deal with things. And in interpersonal relations, it's always good to strive for harmonious, peaceful interactions, to avoid conflict and enmity. It's said to be very good karma if you are one who makes peace between those who are at enmity. And it's very bad karma if you set beings at odds, which is one way that that happens on a slightly trivial level, although it can go beyond the trivial, is with gossip. The tendency, if you talking to a friend and you start talking about a third one, and it's sort of an entertainment to run them down and talk about their faults, and that's very unskillful kind of speech. That's creating difficulties. A good way to deal with that, if you're the recipient of that, if someone starts gossiping about a third party in your presence, is then to find something good, positive to say about the person. Oh, that Hitler, he's such a mean guy. Yeah, but he loves his dog. This is the kind of, you try to find something, it doesn't matter how wicked a person is, there's going to be some redeeming quality. You can try and take the edge off. And try and develop that harmonious attitude within your own being first. Try to not be at enmity with anyone in the world. And this might mean, in some instances, you just avoid people, the people that are problematic, but try and not harbor that hostility. And this is where metta meditation is very useful. In developing that heart of loving kindness, of well-wishing. And it's a common experience, many people will vouch for it, that if you do metta meditation regularly for a period of time, you'll find that not only you start feeling more harmonious, but people react to you in that way. They reflect it back to you. And people that maybe previously were snarly with you, now they're starting to calm down around you and be more peaceful. Our mind states, first and foremost, are our own responsibility. You're responsible for your own mind state. And this is something that always to remember. Never cop out by blaming other people for your mind state. Don't say, oh, she makes me so angry all the time, I can't help it. Even if she's acting in a totally irresponsible, negative way, that's her mind states are unskillful, but yours are your own responsibility, how you react to that. So they're first of all your own responsibility, but your mind states also have a reflection out into the world. Now, if you're negative and prickly and irritable all the time, then people are going to react to you in that way. They're going to come back at you. You're going to see the whole world as being negative because everybody you interact with is reflecting that to some degree. We're kind of mirrors of each other. But if you're coming from a place of calm and harmony, then that's going to touch something in other people, and you're going to gradually see that more and more reflected. It even affects wild animals. In the jungles, the monks that practice metta, the wild animals don't attack them. And there's many stories about tigers that are. So there's one story in one of the, and I can't remember who it is now. I should, but it's one of the famous Thai Ajahns. When he was youngish, he was walking with a candle lantern through the forest, and a tiger came up on him and was standing in front of him in the trail, looking like he was ready to pounce, growling with the ears back and so on. So this monk overcome his momentary panic, and he thought, no, I'm probably going to die in the next few minutes. If I'm going to die, I want to die with a mind established in loving kindness. And he went into metta meditation, and next thing he knows, he opened his eyes, and it was daylight, and the candle lantern had burned down, and there was no sign of the tiger. He went into a deep jhana on metta meditation, and the tiger was completely rendered harmless. Lost the will to attack him. So if you projecting that, then it does affect other beings around you. The metta or any of the Brahma Viharas are kind of effusive qualities that spread beyond our own being. And the fourth and highest of the Brahma Viharas is upekkha, equanimity, which is a factor closely related to passaddhi, the peacefulness. It's the aspect of non-conflict expressed at a very deep level. If you're equanimous, you're upekkha, then you're seeing the essential universal quality of sameness in things, in dhammas. There's different degrees of upekkha, different kinds. The upekkha as a Brahma Vihara is upekkha directed towards persons. So you focus on what is universal in persons, which is that they are subject to their karma. So this is a reflection that can be useful when you're facing hostility or negative energy coming from someone else, is to reflect that they are subject to their karma. They're making their own karma, and they're existing as a fruit of their previous karma. But the deeper kind of equanimity is the equanimity towards dhammas, towards every phenomena that arises in the mind. And this is where it really ties into both peacefulness and to wisdom, panya. When we're looking at individual dhammas, dhamma meaning an object of consciousness, we develop clear seeing of it seeing both the particular and the universal. The particular is the application of discriminating wisdom, is to see the particular nature of a Dhamma, whether this is a thought object or a feeling or a sense impression, and whether it's strong or weak, whether it's skillful or unskillful, and so on, all these kind of particularities. But the other aspect of wisdom which is applied is seeing equalizing wisdom, to see what's common in all Dhammas, which are the three characteristics of emptiness, impermanence, and imperfection or suffering. You see that all sankharas, all conditioned Dhammas, are marked by these three characteristics. They have them in common. And when you see things in that way, that begins to open the mind to peacefulness, because you're not expecting something different. This is just things as they are. This is the nature of things. And particularly when you can get some direct insight into the emptiness of phenomena. See the emptiness of self and the emptiness of others. Emptiness of subject and emptiness of object. And that's very peaceful when you can experience things in that way, because there's no conflict, there's no push and pull, there's no rubbing, there's no agitation in emptiness. So I'll wrap it up, just summarize it to say that it's very useful in many ways and very pleasant and beneficial to develop a peacefulness of mind, and it's something very valuable and to be cherished in the world, and a benefit to self and to others.
Maya Dhamma Kataya Sadhu Kalam Dada Mase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.